It is a Deer Talk edition of Talking Sports with Evan, because as the headline of the show says today, Dame time no more in Milwaukee. And what a crazy 2.5 ish days it's been for the Bucks. I kind of feel like the Dame Lillard trade all over again when my phone blew up on that one with the Miles Turner signing in Milwaukee, and of course with the Bucks making these moves, had to call the deer signal, I guess I'll call it the bat signal, and bring on Tristian Thomas. And appreciate you jumping on last minute here and chopping it up about the Bucks and John Horst kind of going on a bender.
Oof. When Horse is quiet, he's usually working, and he was definitely working overtime these past couple of days.
Yeah, he definitely was. And, I got some notification, like, I think it was Facebook memories, and popping up the Greg Monroe signing. And that was a huge deal at the time because holy crap, the Bucks just signed a big name free agent.
Right.
And now they're to the point as a franchise, a guy like Miles Turner is wanting and willing to come to Milwaukee. And thanks to apparently Giannis for getting in his ear and chirping it up in his ear to bring him in.
Yeah, you got to give him some credit for being that superstar that kind of recruits, and he recruits the players that make sense. He doesn't just go up and speak to, you know, other players that other superstars like himself, and just say, oh, come on over. But it really doesn't make sense. So credit to him for doing that.
Yeah, well, before we really dive in, just want to let people know where to find your stuff. I do have the banner at the bottom of the screen, but if you want to let people know where they can find your reactions on this and anything else sports related.
Hey, well, at D20 double on X, on Threads. We're on Facebook. That's facebook.com/T on Sports Show. Obviously, tossnationmedia.com. We just dropped a brand new episode of Toss at midnight earlier today. So fresh heat straight out the kitchen for y'all.
Yeah, I'm kind of guessing. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I'm guessing there was some Milwaukee Bucks conversation going on in there.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Well, I had a feeling John Horst had something up his sleeve because the goal is obviously build around Giannis. I'm not going to say do things to keep Giannis because I honestly don't see Giannis leaving. Period. I don't see Giannis going to the Bucks saying, "Hey, I want to go someplace else," and I don't see the Bucks approaching Giannis and saying, "Hey, if you want to win another championship, your best at this point, your best bet is to go someplace else." I don't see that happening. So I look at it, John Horst looking for a way to upgrade the roster around Giannis to put the best product forward. And I remember all the talk was gap year, gap year, gap year. Well, I think John Horst said, "I'll take your gap year and stuck it up your word I don't want to say."
Your gap.
There you go. So, what are your general reactions of first of all Miles Turner coming to the Bucks, and what exactly does he bring to the Bucks?
I'll say this. This was definitely not something that was on my radar. I believe Chris B. Haynes said on NBA TV the night before the signing was announced that all signs were pointing to Miles Turner returning to the Pacers until the news broke out that the Pacers lowballed him, and I guess that opened up the door for the Bucks to kind of say, "Hey, look, this is what we got for you. You got a chance to play against an all-time great in Giannis. We're building a roster around him. You're going to be able to be that rim protector, to be that guy who could stretch the floor, provide us what Brook provided us." And you saw what happened when Brook was able to be nimble and be a little bit more agile than what he once was. It led us to a championship. So that's what he brings to the table. He's 8 years younger than Brook. He's going to give you that stretch ability to he can hit that three. He's going to give you that rim protection. The rebounds are virtually just about the same, which you will love to see that number uptick. Obviously, with a man his size, but when you're playing that stretch position, those rebounds just really aren't going to be there for you on a consistent basis like that. So you get the stretch shooting, you get the rim protection. That's what you're getting out of Miles Turner. You're younger at that position. You're a lot more agile, a lot more athletic, and that's exactly what this team needed to do. And that's what John Force went and did. He made the team younger. He made him more athletic. He made him more agile at every position.
I think people forget just how good Brook Lopez was pre back surgery. He was pretty good post back surgery too, but I mean the explosiveness, the quickness, the footwork. He developed into a 3-point shooter in Milwaukee, and Turner to me is going to kind of be what when Brook Lopez first came to Milwaukee. Turner to me is kind of going to bring pretty much exactly the same thing, just that big in the post that can do a little bit of everything. They can shoot, as you say, can stretch the floor, and we've seen it in the playoffs numerous times. He can posterize people too.
Oh yeah, yeah, and this is why I get, and I'll talk about it on toss. Book doesn't get enough credit for the player that he was. If people forget, he's the Brooklyn Nets' all-time leading scorer. He didn't do that from the three-point line. He did that because he was adept in the post, and he never lost that. He changed his game to stay up with the way the game is played and made himself a big factor on what ended up being a championship team. So you have to give him all the credit in the world for being what he was in Brooklyn for that year in LA. Then, he had the back surgery. He's in Milwaukee, coming back, leading them to a championship and a lot of success there. So to give him all the credit in the world. You can never say anything bad to me about Brook. He is forever beloved. I will forever love what he did, but it was time for the franchise and him to move on.
Yeah, it definitely was because as we saw in the playoffs, and I hate saying this about him because I love everything he did for the Bucks, but he was pretty much unplayable against Miles Turner.
Unplayable.
So
Unplayable.
not the only move the Bucks did yesterday. And we'll talk about the moves they made on Monday in a little bit. But to make it work, everyone was just assuming the Bucks are going to go after Ayton from the Portland Trailblazers. That's everything I saw Monday night. Is don't be surprised if the Bucks go after him. They didn't use the mid-level exemption at all for the guys they brought back, and they just assumed that they're going to go over Ayton with the mid-level exception. But instead, they make salary space for Turner by releasing Damian Lillard and stretching his contract out for the next 5 years. That's got to be very shocking. I think it's probably one of the biggest wows the NBA's had in a while.
Yeah, that sent shockwaves throughout the entire basketball world. Forget just the NBA. I mean, you're talking WNBA, you talk about college ball, you talk about high school ball, you're talking middle school ball, you're talking elementary school ball. What my son is in, it sent shockwaves throughout because a player of that caliber, a top 75 player, still very much a superstar in this league had a really, really rough injury, and I mentioned it on toss. I hate the fact that the last image that we're going to see of Dame Lillard is him holding his Achilles after tearing it, after putting his body on the line, giving his all to everything to try and help the Bucks achieve great things. And that's the last image that we're going to have of him in Bucks uniform. It's very, very tough. But I've been having conversations for the past few weeks, and trying to get a hold of people, try to have conversations, and eventually had those conversations. And one of those directions that they alluded to was that there was going to be a discussion about Dame. I did not expect this to be the result. I knew there was going to be a discussion, maybe a salary discussion, whatever, what have you, to move some money around so the Bucks could make some moves. A wave was not something that I foresaw happening. I don't think it's anything anyone ever saw happening. And then to have the biggest stretch of a contract in NBA history. Bucks are no stranger to the stretch. They did so with Larry Sanders, but Larry Sanders was making what 1.8 million. I mean, this is 22 and a half. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's definitely mind-boggling, and it's a good. It's ultimately a good situation for Dame. From if you believe the reports that are circulating, that he wanted to be in the Portland area while he rehabbed and worked on getting that Achilles right, rather than doing it in Milwaukee. Bucks wanted him in Milwaukee, which I understand too. I kind of, you understand both points of view, but it works for Dame because Dame now has his choice of where to go. The thing that with Portland, when he was traded to Milwaukee, he didn't have a say. And obviously, Milwaukee was not his first choice. He did his best to make it work. But now he gets to go where he wants to go. And we've already heard Golden State sniffing around, LA sniffing around, Miami sniffing around. He gets to finish his career the way he wants to finish it rather than forcing a trade somewhere else. And I do wish him the best of luck. And I was joking around that, hey, when he's cleared to play, maybe he can always show back up in Milwaukee, which unfortunately isn't the case. He can't do that because of the stretch, but I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, it's nothing but the best to Dame, man. He came in and and Lord knows he tried his best to work. He had a lot of stuff off the court that really affected him, and I mean you can't really blame him. I mean, he built pretty much a community in Portland, which is where he had been for so long. His wife or ex-wife at the time now were there. His children were there. His family, his relatives, his friends, everything was there. So it's really hard to not get yourself in shape because you have to keep yourself healthy for a trade that you knew was coming, and then you get traded and it's not to your preferred destination, but now you're playing with another superstar and you're trying to make that work. And I mentioned this on Toss. It's okay to admit when something doesn't work. The Dame Giannis combo just did not work. We hoped it would. We had dreams of what it could be, but it just didn't work. And when something doesn't work, you have to move on from it. So we didn't expect this, but John Horst and I even said to eat a contract, $113 million. You know who one of the Bucks owners is? Jimmy Haslam. You know what another team he owns is the Cleveland Browns. You know who their quarterback is, Deshaun Watson. Guaranteed money. He's going to make these guys eat this. That was a Jimmy Haslam move. He definitely signed off on it. Uh, so I just saying. But nobody expected this to happen at the time it did. But it was the right move. It was the right thing to do, and I think people still need to kind of wrap their heads around that.
Yeah. Now, by releasing, well, Dame wasn't going to play till probably February anyway, as if he even played this year.
Yeah,
But now
if that.
Bucks have Kevin Porter Jr. and at point guard. What do you see the Bucks do? I know they're probably going to have Giannis facilitate a lot more, like they did late in the year this past year. But what else do you see the Bucks potentially doing at that point guard position? You have Ryan Rollins, who still could come back. You have Chris Paul, who hasn't signed anywhere yet. I've seen his name floating around. Malcolm Brogdon's name's floating around. What do you see the Bucks doing to add some depth to that point guard position?
And I mentioned it on Toss this week as well. I have no idea what they're going to do with that point guard position, but they need to do something. I know Chris Paul's name is out there. Chris Paul would prefer to stay closer to home, so Milwaukee's definitely not an option.
Well,
Malcolm Brogdon,
get along either.
yeah, right. So it's Malcolm Brogdon. We know the sentiments that he had on his way out when he was here before. Do you really want to revisit that? Is he really going to be 100% committed? Is he going to be able to come over and play at the right price?
And it's
That's all being explored.
the
Ryan Rollins,
health
I
issue.
was really exactly. So it's very Ryan Rollins is a young guy that I really liked what he brought to the table last season. That's one reason why I have beef with Doc. You can't start somebody then stop them. Start then stop, start then stop. The rest of we call it push and stop, push and stop. You push them for a little bit and they just put the brakes on it. You can't do that because you don't allow that player, that performer to get any sort of momentum, any sort of continuity with the team, and it really affects him. He did the same thing with Andre Jackson. So that's my beef with Doc is that he continues to do this. You have a guy out there who's producing. He's showing you he can play, he can hoop, and Ryan Rollins can hoop. He could definitely be an answer there for you if you're going to give him consistent minutes. But now it's a question of is he even going to be able to come back? So it's a very puzzling situation right now at the point guard spot, but it is definitely a spot they have to do something with.
Yeah, I know they originally gave him a qualifying offer, a tender to make him a restricted free agent, and they did rescind it, but they didn't rescind it because they don't want him anymore. They had to do that for Miles Turner to get that contract to work. Hence, they also released Chris Livingston today as well before that contract becomes guaranteed, because they did what they could to make room for it. That was a $22 million a year, but they still have some work to do to make that work, and then also potentially bring in a point guard as well. Gary Trent Jr. coming back, Kevin Porter Jr. coming back. The other one coming back kind of surprised me a little bit, and I hope Doc learned his lessons with him last year. Is Prince. What are your thoughts on bringing, and then Bobby Portis obviously coming back as on a new contract as well. What are your thoughts on those signings? Bringing, basically, it looked like they're going to bring the band back together, minus Brooke, before yesterday. What are your thoughts on them coming back?
Yeah, minus Brooke, minus Pat, who they essentially had to pay the Charlotte Hornets to take
At
for a
the
guy
time,
that,
at the time Monday, he was still a buck though.
yeah. I mean, so it's for Bobby, obviously, I like that. Obviously, you have that heart, that toughness. Six man extraordinaire. He can step in. To start when you need him to. He's definitely proven his worth. I don't think he's regressed any. He's still been good, and I still think he could be good in the spot and in the role that you give him. Gary Trent, I heard that he was a priority. They had to get him done. They were dead set on getting something done with him, and they were able to do that. You look at what Duncan Robinson got, you got to steal with Gary Trent because Gary Trent is with a far better player than is Duncan Robinson. But I digress. Um, Torian Prince. You talk about Brook Lopez being unplayable in the playoffs. Torian Prince was probably even worse than Brook. I mean, he did nothing defensively. He could not make a shot. I believe in that entire Indiana series, he made, I believe, two shots, two field goals, maybe. It just, he was in single digit minutes for, I believe, the last three games of that series. It was absolutely atrocious play, and it was really a culmination of what was a second half slide. If you remember the first half, he kind of, I believe he led the NBA in 3-point field goal positions for almost entire first half. And then that second half hit, and it just was a giant regression for him. So I'm hoping that was just a rough spot. I'm hoping he turns around, is more consistent all the way through. But you said you hope Doc learned his lesson. Doc has a habit of learning his lesson way too late. Yeah, we saw that in Game 5 against Indiana when he pretty much played that same five into the ground until they eventually lost that game. So he's hard headed. He learned his lesson way too late. And I don't think he's going to learn his lesson too well with Torian Prince. I think he's going to put him out there, and it's going to be a struggle at times. It's going to be ugly at times, especially if he plays the way he did in the second half.
You look at the contract Prince signed. You look at the contract Trent signed. You look at this contract Kevin Porter Jr. signed. Do you think they signed those contracts? Because Gary Trent could have got. I know there's not a lot of money out there, but Gary Trent could have got a lot more money than that. Do you think they signed that contract with uh, John Horst, letting them know, like, hey, this is our grand plan. So you do this, make it work, then we're gonna bring Miles Turner in. Like, do you think he kind of like laid it out to the agents that way to get them to take a pay cut to stay in Milwaukee like that?
Yeah, I think he definitely had to sell that deal to not only his representation but him himself. We're trying to make the team better. We have this player who we want to bring in. You can play alongside him. That's going to do nothing but good things for you. We have plans of doing this, that, and X, Y, Z. They definitely had. I mean, to put somebody on a one-and-one deal, which is basically what this is, because the second year is a player option for all those players that you mentioned. It's and even Bobby Portis for third year is a player option as well. It's the Bucks kind of kicking the can down the road because they're being very creative with what they did this season, but there's going to be some even tougher decisions coming down the pike for them, especially with them kicking the can down the road. So it's definitely a big sale job by John Horst. He got it done, fortunately, but we'll see if it turns into something bigger. He definitely, I think he earned it. I'm so grateful that he was able to come back and run it back at the price that he did. I'm definitely not mad at the math.
No. Before we talk about how the Bucks shape up as is against the rest of the Eastern Conference, Windenhorst thinks, quote, and I'm going to read it how it says it on the tweet here. He goes, "My concern for the Bucks' forthcoming pitch to Giannis is wanna be long term is they don't move the needle enough." And then Wittenhorst thinks the Miles Turner trade, which I didn't realize we traded for him, but anyway, might not be enough to keep Giannis in Milwaukee. Bill Simmons, big named NBA writer, commentator, trashing the trade. Chris Haynes, which of course he has to because he's Dame Lillard's boy, basically running, like criticizing. A lot of the national media attention are very critical with what the Bucks did, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on that because it seems like since about 2018, 2019, the national media truly wants Giannis out of Milwaukee by any means necessary.
Yeah, and Giannis has said multiple times he's not going to go anywhere. They're going to have to kick him out. You heard those words from the man himself. I don't know how much more you want until he comes out and says, "I want to trade." I want out. There's nothing to discuss. Now, this is just the national media trying to craft that narrative as they do. We've seen them be able to craft a narrative and control the awards or have some sort of an influence on players wanting to get out. And this is for me, this is what it feels like them trying to craft that narrative. Oh, he needs to be in a big market. Milwaukee is failing him. How's Milwaukee failing him? He had the best shooting he had around him, talking Giannis, in his career last season. They were trashing those moves. He basically gets that same shooting back, and he gets an upgrade with one of his front court mates. Yes, you lose another top 75 player, you lose a superstar in Dame, but the thing is, you may not have had him all year anyway. So you have to do something. You have to get creative and try to swing for the fence. And that's what the Bucks did. So instead of trashing them, give Horst and his team credit for getting creative, taking that big swing to try and be in contention in a tattered Eastern Conference. I mean, you talk about Jason Tatum down with an Achilles injury. Talk about Dame Lillard down with an Achilles injury. Tyrese Halliburton down with an Achilles injury. We don't know if Embiid's ever going to play a full season healthy ever again. The only team that you really don't have much concern about are the Cavs. Like in the East. So and maybe the Knicks. So the landscape has really changed because of injury. You have a shot to be a contender. The moves that they've made, the shooting that is there, the upgrade defensively. Doc can find a way to make it all work to really cook this meal the way he envisions it. You're talking a team that could easily be top three in the East, not 4 or 5 like Windhorst and other people are saying, and not trashing this team. Obviously, they have to go out there and prove it on the court. But looking at it on paper, yeah, you look at every team on paper and you see their deficiencies where they are right now. The Bucks could very easily, if everybody comes together, be a top 3 team in the East. They just got to stop it.
Yeah, I just the national media narrative just irritates me so much. It's just like, why do you want to like Jokic? Similar situation in regards to trying to build teams around him to keep, to be championship contenders. You never hear it out of Denver. Like, yeah, the Joker, he might want to ask out. You never hear it there, but yet you always hear it in Milwaukee. And as the roster is constructed right now, and you kind of went into a little bit here, but the Cavaliers have some financial constraints. There are going to be some issues there. I believe Garland, I think it was Garland, had some injury issues too. The Knicks hired Mike Brown to be their head coach. They would have been better off keeping Thibodeau personally, but they hired Mike Brown to be their head coach after a disastrous head coaching search. You mentioned Boston with Tatum out, plus they moved on from Porzingis and Drew Holiday. And you got the Pacers with Halliburton out the entire year, and now no Miles Turner there either. Orlando looks to be a bit of a team on the rise in the East. Where does the Bucks stack up against the Eastern Conference in your mind right now? As you
I
mentioned
mean,
top,
right,
but where do they? How
yeah,
do they
right now.
overall?
I mean, right now, I mean, I honestly think they could be a top 3 team in the East. I'm not saying one. I'm not saying they could be a top 3 team in the East, depending on how things shake out. Again, you got Doc Rivers as your head coach, and as I mentioned, he is hard headed. He does not really adjust until it's too late, a la Mike Budenholzer. So I mean, that's really what you're dealing with, and it's really a matter of what moves are the Bucks going to make at point guard. Are they going to move Kyle Kuzma, in order to do something there? I don't know. Are all these players going to come together, play their roles, be a star in their roles, and Giannis be Giannis. If he's going to go out there and get you 30, 11, and 6 on 60% shooting, I mean, what should be an MVP season because nobody else has ever done it, they could be easily a top 3 team in the East.
Yeah, they definitely can. You mentioned Doc. That's and no pun, no pun intended here. Aside from point guard, that's got to be one of their biggest Achilles heels right now because Doc just. I didn't like the hire to begin with. I wish they would have did a actual coaching hire after they decided to move on from Griffin. I know you and I've had that conversation before, but Doc just never really impressed me as a whole. I think Boston was more of the players around him than anything he did. But to me, it doesn't seem like he always puts his teams in the best position to win, and that's going to be the biggest problem, I think, for the Bucks.
Yeah, and it's wild because he's one of the winningest head coaches in NBA history, both in the regular season and playoffs. Um, and people forget Tom Thibodeau was basically his defensive coordinator on that championship team in Boston, and when they got back to the finals. So it's you're right. He doesn't always put his players in the best position to succeed. And Game 5 was really cognizant of that. He ran the same lineup into the ground. Those guys played, all of them played 40 plus minutes, all of them. I mean, and I get you have some guys who are virtually unplayable, but when you got a lineup and you see them and they're gassed, you got to do something. You got to get some guys out there. You got to coach them up, put them in the best position to hold that lead to where it doesn't go into overtime and to where it doesn't become a one possession game and it doesn't come down to making an inbound pass and make sure you do it the right way. So he's definitely at times a detriment. You don't like saying that about a coach, but you look at every single team that he's been on and the situations they've been in postseason and building up to postseason in the regular season. You've had some puzzling losses, some puzzling lineups, some like I said, starts and stops with players who come in and they finally get an opportunity and they're playing well. Then all of a sudden he just benches them and you never see them again. They get banished to the shadow realm, and it's not good for the team. You need to be able to develop. You need to be able to have guys that are learning how to go out there, learning how to play, learning how to win, making your team better, increasing the longevity of a winning window, and nothing but good for your franchise. But a lot of times that's just not Doc, and that's really the biggest problem I have with him. It just like I said, he does not always put his teams in the best position to succeed.
I'm guessing one of the people you're talking about with the stop and start is Andre Jackson Jr. Offensively, can definitely improve his game quite a bit, but you look at what he did against Oklahoma City in the midseason tournament championship game. He shut the MVP down in that series.
Yeah.
And him and AJ Green, somebody who Doc seems to trust quite a bit now. Where do you see their ceiling? Are they do they have more that they can grow into, or is what we see what we got with them?
One of the current head coach, what you see is what you get. I don't know. He wants them to develop into anything different. I think he wants them to be those 3 and D guys, and who doesn't need 3 and D guys? They come in handy. Look at PJ Tucker. I mean, he was the 3 and D guy, very integral part of that 21 championship team. So you definitely need those guys like that to go out there and help you get stops, go out there and make some big shots when you know you your best are covered. When they're looking for those guys to get the ball and they're going to pass it out to you and you're going to have that wide open shot, you got to be able to make it. He wants those guys to be that. So I think under Doc Rivers, what you see is what you get. Another coach, who knows, it may develop them a different way and their ceiling could be shattered.
Yeah, and I just you saw it in the Indiana series, the series that Giannis didn't play 2 years ago. When he played it, Adrian Jackson, there was a spark, and then he would go and stop playing him for a series. I guess we'll have to see maybe with the 30 assistant coaches that Doc has with the team, maybe he finally decides to take some of their advice and their input as well. But this team
It's
has constructed, can they make the NBA Finals?
ooh, man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, we know they haven't exactly enjoyed the most playoff success since that championship. You know, they've also had a rash of injuries, whether it be to Chris Middleton, whether it be to Giannis, whether it be to Dame. You know, they've suffered some pretty bad playoff losses, pretty bad endings to their seasons. Do I see them as an NBA Finals team as constructed on paper right now? No. You know, especially that point guard position. You know, you got to have that because when the playoffs come around, it's who can execute in half court. You know, it's not going to be this constant 130, 140 point games. It's going to be who can get down and get stops and who can execute in half court. You got to be able. You have to be able to have a good point guard to be able to get you in the right positions to be able to do that. So that's an area of concern. And again, Doc Rivers is an area of concern. And are these players going to be stars in their roles? You know what Giannis is going to bring. We know he's been consistent. He's going to get you, you know, close to 30. He's going to get you over 10 rebounds. He's going to get you 5, 6 assists a game. He's going to get you a steal, a block a game. He's going to be, you know, that superstar player on both ends of the basketball court. But is everyone else ready to step into their roles, be stars in their roles, and understand that, okay, you know, we got a chance to do something special here. You know, this roster was shook up. We're the survivors of it. We're here for a reason. We got to go out there and get it. So, as constructed on paper, I won't say NBA Finals, but I do think that they could make a deep run in playoffs. I do believe that.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, get you on to talk about a rash of shocking developments that the Bucks have done over the last 48 hours. Nothing that I was really considering. Like I said, it's the most shocked I've been since I saw the Wojo bomb of the Bucks trading for Damian Lillard. That was like the last time I was as shocked as I was. But I do appreciate you coming on, Tristian Thomas. He is at on X down below. And what's the website?
TossNationMedia.com. Your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports talk. It's what you deserve.
And that's I probably should put on the ticker on the bottom as well. So I usually rotate through when I have guests on, but yours I just have one that stays because I get you on so frequently. So
We got all good. We right there. We all good. We all good.
well, I appreciate it. I know it was very last minute. Now podcast version will be available tomorrow morning. We can find this show on X at Evan Wood Sports, YouTube and Facebook Talking Sports with Evan. I know Facebook is now starting to delete live videos after they've been out for so long, but YouTube, all past shows are right there under the live section on YouTube. Follow, like, subscribe. Substack is where you find all the podcasts as well. Sports Thoughts from Evan, or you can find it on Apple or Spotify as well. Tomorrow, switching gears, it's going to be Brew Talk. Going to have Matt Carroll, friend of show as well, coming on to talk a little beyond the halfway point now of the season, but talk the first half of the Milwaukee Brewers. So with that said, thank you for watching, and we'll be back at it